Welcome to AgencyRise, the podcast where digital marketing agencies rise together. I'm your host, Chris Rudolph. I've spent the last decade coaching digital agency founders, helping them scale, systemize operations, and break free from the day-to-day grind. On this podcast, we talk about what really moves the needle for agencies, getting clients, building a team, creating systems, productivity, focus, and freedom. So no hype here, no guru nonsense, just real conversations from the agency trenches. So today, my guest is Anne Popolizio, and she is the founder of Social Squib, and she is based in New Jersey. Social Squib is a boutique digital marketing agency helping high investment service providers leverage measured paid social and full funnel strategy to build trust and predictable growth. So, Anne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, let's start. For those that may not be familiar with you, tell us a little bit more about you and your agency.
So Social Squib, we were founded in 2016 by me. And I started this agency because at the time I needed to be geographically independent. So I was like, well, what can I do? And I knew that I knew how to do social media. I had been I've been the director of a sailing school actually for 2 years prior. And I was like, well, there's this piece that I clearly don't, I'm not terrible at. And, we had 2 years of, 30% growth in a row because of the marketing plan that I'd implemented. And I was like, well, I clearly can handle this. And so I was like, at a minimum, I can help, another client that matches the profile of the school. And digital marketing was at the time still relatively new, especially on the social side, social media for business, that was still relatively new. And so I went out into the world, out onto my own. My first stop was a very isolated little beach in Antigua. And I started Social Squib literally with a 2G Wi-Fi stick and a $500 tablet computer. And I was kind of like bouncing back and forth between New Jersey and Antigua for a couple of months for the first 6 months, and got it was a couple of tiny little clients, and then I got a referral from my sister actually, and then it all went from there, and it was just the little business that could, and it just kept cutting, and now we're here and we're about to turn 10. Which is pretty exciting. Yeah. That's our
That is amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that is common, in talking to agency founders, for like over 10 years. Like, it's rare that someone had a 20-year plan and this is exactly how they were going to craft their marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love hearing the stories like that of how that happened. Tell us, like from that time till now, like tell us, some of the pivots, the mistakes, or like moments that like actually shaped where you are today.
So many. Oh my goodness, where do we start? We learned a lot of lessons along the way. I think one of the best pieces of advice that somebody gave me, this came from a client, one of our early clients, and she said, build the system for where you want to be. And I really took that to heart. And so I've always focused on the systems. And, every time we have had a misstep, every time a team member has stuck their foot in it, made a giant mistake, whatever it is, the first thing I always look at is the system. And did I give them what they needed to be successful? Not like, were they working hard enough? I generally think I hire people that care, so the first thing that I'm always looking at is, did I give them what they need to succeed? And 9 times out of 10, when the team member has made a giant raging mistake, it's because there was something lacking in the system. That I didn't dummy proof it, that I didn't give them all the information they need, that, it took us a while we eventually moved into Airtable and started centralizing everything. But, there was a long period of time where everything was running through me, and I was the centralized record. I was central command. And it took a long time to shift away from that. And I think, every time that we would grow, we didn't grow linearly. We always grew in plateaus. We would take a giant step and then we'd hang out there and we'd struggle to find our footing and race as fast as we can to keep up with the sudden surge of growth. And then we'd be good for a while. And then eventually we'd get comfortable in that spot. And then we'd have another surge of growth. It wasn't one little bit at a time. It was boom, boom. But yeah, I think that was a big lesson, was to always be looking systematically and looking at the system first and foremost. And then once I have confirmed that I have given everything from a systems standpoint to the team member, and they're still screwing up, then we have a different conversation. But the system is always the first place that I'm looking whenever a team member makes a mistake, because usually, like I said, 9 times out of 10, that's actually where the problem was.
Yeah, that's really good. I think sometimes the knee jerk reaction of founders is to
Hmm.
like blame the the
Yeah,
employee, or like
yeah.
want to fire them,
Hmm.
or whatever. But
Hmm.
I think that's a really healthy like those
Hmm.
questions to ask ourselves is like,
Hmm.
did I give them what they needed, or is the system
Right,
where it needs to be for them to be
right.
successful? I love that.
Yeah.
But what else? Yeah, anything that any unpredictable turns or like challenges that kind of came out of nowhere over these years?
Let's see. We have been very fortunate in the sense, and this is by design. I think that the business is quite controlled. We're a little picky in who we take on as clients. So I know, like, I've heard from other agency people that their number one complaint is clients, and that's very much not our situation. If I get whiff in the proposal process that this is going to be a problematic client, I just conveniently redirect them elsewhere.
Hmm.
Uh, but so we've been very fortunate in that regard. I think the periods of like unpredictability have been those big surges. We had a few really big surges about a year and a half in. Year and a half in? No, it was 2 years in. Well, no, sorry. We had a big surge exactly 1 year in. We had a big surge in 2017, in the early 2017, and then we had another big surge in 2018, and another big surge in 2020. And those surges were always really intense. And it was always hard to navigate. The solution was always hire someone who's really good at what they're doing. And that's how we like got through some of the most difficult parts. But what else? At the same time, I can also say that those periods of surge, and finding out where we had what we needed to provide the highest quality of service we could to our clients, and where we didn't. They were big growth moments for us as well. Being able to say, okay, we're ready for this next person on the team. We need someone who is really good at design. We need someone who's really good at integrations. And we need someone who's really good at organic. And I think that because I came from an in-house marketing background, I was very much a jack of all trades when I started.
Hmm.
And in a lot of ways, that's great, because I understand and have touched nearly every aspect of what we do today. That doesn't mean I was excellent at it. Whenever I tried to be the person executing on something I wasn't excellent at, guess what? It wasn't that great. And as soon as we made the right hire, as soon as we hired somebody who was a specialist in that particular area, and who was excellent at that job, everything got easier, and the work that we're able to provide for clients and the service we're able to provide for clients really stepped up. And that's front facing and behind the scenes. I think one of the areas that I prioritized early on when I started the agency was analytics. And I knew that I was like, if I'm going to offer this as a service, I have to really understand the tracking, the attribution. I need to be able to prove a return. And so I suffered through the Google Analytics Academy. I went like the old one, not the new
Yeah.
one. The new one's a lot better, but the old one, bless their hearts for making it free and publicly available. But oh my God, was that one rough? The new version, I think they released the new version in like 2018 or something, and it was so much better.
Oh,
It was so
man.
much better. But I got all the way through it, and I knew it was really important to get through it. And then that was for a long time I was doing the analytics, and then eventually we hired somebody who was an expert in analytics and tag manager and tracking setup, and especially with With GA4, when they rolled out GA4, there was no question we needed somebody who knew a heck of a lot more than I did. I mean, we had
Yeah.
somebody before the GA4 rollout as well. And then we were kind of floating for a little bit. And then as soon as GA4 rolled out, I took a course in GA4 enough to kind of wrap my head around the concept. And then in 5 minutes later, I was like, okay, we have to hire now because this is not implementation that is the best use of my time. That's an example of like a back end service that we provide to our clients. It's an area where we assist our clients a lot in analytics and tracking, in reporting and setup. And I wouldn't have done that if I hadn't prioritized learning it for myself, and obviously hiring someone who's really good at what they do. And as soon as every time I've hired someone, we've been able to step up the service and step up the quality of service and the level of service that we're providing. Then it turns back and means that we can provide a better service from the paid social side and from the email, the content side. So the front facing work that we do gets better because the back end work is stronger.
Yeah, that's great. I know, I think like the core of why brands hire agencies, it's like to get an ROI or get a particular result.
Hmm.
And I mean, without the data, the reality of what's happening, that can be really cloudy or, really difficult to always justify the
Hmm.
cost or cost increases and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Oh yeah.
I love how you really addressed that and even, got in and learned enough to be dangerous and to be
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an important thing, is like, knowing enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, you mentioned, with each surge, it was a growth opportunity, and that's where you hired, people that you mentioned were like stronger
Mhm.
in those particular areas than you are. When it comes to hiring and leading a team, like what are a couple tips that you give founders out here listening?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because in my experience, I've learned what I have been taught is there's two different models to hiring. There's the, franchise style model of hiring where you create the system and then you find the cheapest worker you can who can just kind of monkey their way through the system. And then you've got at the other end of the spectrum, you have the Netflix model. So if you've ever read No Rules Rules, written by the founder of Netflix, and he talks about the exact opposite approach. You hire the best person you can afford and you pay them at the top of the market. I I have seen agencies use and I know early on, there was a business coach that was kind of pushing that franchise style model for hiring and team management, and it just never quite sat well with me. And so it wasn't the direction I ever went. And then I read No Rules Rules, and I was like, okay, this is really that franchise model is really not the direction I'm going to go. And I really leaned in hard to, as best I could, into that No Rules Rules model. And I think it served us really well. We've never had, maybe minor issues, but generally the team performs really well. And it's not a team I need to worry about or micromanage. I don't have to do the thinking for, most of the team members. So, when a team member is compensated to that higher rate, what is the difference between a $20 an hour job and a $40 an hour job or a $75 an hour job? The difference is, do I have to think for you? Are you bringing
Mhm.
the thinking to the table? And my life is a lot easier when I hire people who can do the thinking. Um, and the work is better. Are you like, again, you're hired on our team, you're hired generally for an area of knowledge that you have some kind of specialty in. um, I expect our team members to lead the way in their area of specialty, that you should know more than I do. I want you to know more than I do. And I want you to be paying attention, keeping a pulse on things. We meet monthly, and everybody has to go around the room and share an observation that they've made in their sector of the world or their sector of the industry. And I do that, because inevitably a client's going to ask me about whatever it is that somebody brought up the next week. And that's how I kind of stay one step ahead of the clients. But it's also, a way for me to kind of make sure that they're paying attention and that they're keeping a pulse and that they've got their foot on the gas pedal. I don't have to be the one with my foot on the gas pedal for them. They've got their foot on the gas pedal for themselves.
I love that, and I love that even like that once a month, like where they get to share out from their expertise and what they're seeing. That's huge.
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, what's actually working now, like to grow your agency and add clients? What's been effective for you? I know it's a little bit different for every agency.
Yeah, I mean, we're one of those agencies because we're paid social. Paid social is ongoing for so long. So our clients stay with us for years. So we are, uh, as far as growth goes, and this is again another piece of advice that I got, at a key moment, which was to maximize the revenue per client, not the number of clients. And so that's definitely been a major component of our growth strategy. Our growth isn't necessarily because we increase client roster. The number of clients we have has been fairly stable over, say, the last 5 years, but the amount of services we're providing per client has increased. And that's been an important piece of our revenue growth. And then after that, as far as growing the base, as soon as it's very interesting because we made a decision at the end of last year that we wanted to zero in on a certain sector. Not that we were going to get so specialized that we were going to refuse or exclude clients, but who we wanted to court, right? And
Mhm.
I put it up to the team because we have different areas, and the team wanted to court, the construction remodeling space because it's a very creative, visually engaging space. It's got lots of rooms for storytelling. They really like working on that content, and they're very good at working on that content. I thought for sure they were going to go in the legal insurance direction, and they're like, no, we want to go creative. As soon as we didn't have to do anything. As soon as we put those words out into the universe, I swear to goodness, we had 3 referrals come in.
Wow.
And so just being that specific, and it might have been, little conversations that prompt these things, but, having that clarity about who we wanted to court. Again, not saying we will not take somebody on, but this is who we're going to look out and be, courting. I'm going to say it for the 4th time, courting. And so I've always said this with copywriting for social media. Through specificity is universality. Through universality, you get whitewash. So when you're trying to go too general, it's why that generic, AI generated copy doesn't really work that well, is because
Mhm.
it's not specific enough. And just being very clear in the kind of client that you want to attract. We've always been very clear from a qualitative basis, the kind of client we want to attract. We have always been clear that we want to attract businesses that are genuinely seeking to improve their own customers' lives. Now, that doesn't mean we're only courting nonprofits, not in the slightest. But we have a client that's, one of the top 2 most expensive remodelers in the state of New Jersey, but they seek to do the best possible work that they can do for their clients. And so their clients are coming to them with a need, with a problem, with a desire, and they seek to solve that problem and achieve that desire as best as they possibly can with the highest quality of craftsmanship that they can. And they do that with integrity. And so that's a client that perfectly matches the values of the kinds of clients that we're trying to attract. We do love our do-gooders, and we definitely have some clients that are hardcore do-gooders, and we love those clients very, very much. But our number one criteria is, are you seeking to improve the lives of your own customers? And if I ever get a whiff of, is a prospective customer trying to exploit their customers, again, I strategically redirect them.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I love how specific you've gotten with who. I love the word courting too. I think that's a great thing, and that's something I recommend is narrowing your niche to who you serve, and that's
Mhm,
not just industry. I think that's a lot of times the thought that most people have, but
mhm,
even what about them? What's the quality,
mhm,
that are really important, the values of
mhm,
who they are, and I think you made a really good point too that it doesn't mean you can't work with others,
mhm,
who focusing on, who you want to grow and you probably is the best fit for your team
mhm,
is really important because I think, specialists are in the highest demand and have the highest profit margins, a lot higher profit margins than generalists, so
mm,
that's That's good. I love how you do that. I love how you leaned on your team with that too. That is
mhm,
something that takes a lot of trust and I think leadership, to be able to lean into your team to see, who would they wanna work with.
mhm.
Was that was that difficult to do, or was that natural for you to do?
I think it is an example of how our clients teach us. just as much as we impart on our clients. I would say that's actually something I learned from a former client of ours that was in the agile space. So the concept of the collective mind and leveraging the power of the collective mind, and that concept that the collective mind is going to be greater than anything I can come up with on my own. So I would say that is not something that I would have done maybe even 2 or 3 years ago. But on top of that, I went to a conference, a business leadership conference in May, and I was actively trying to implement some of the things that I had learned from that conference. And so kind of all of that came together in this moment of me saying to the team, what's here's three options. And, they came forth with they surprised me, but they came forth with what they really wanted to do. But yeah, I think I'm a strong believer in leveraging the collective, the power of the collective. And it's interesting that you say the trust thing, because I know that there are other business owners out there that don't trust their team. And my experience has been that business owners who don't trust their team, the problem is usually the business owner.
Yeah.
And, we've seen it up close and personal. And I've worked with some fantastic teams. And, if the owner doesn't trust the team, it's not usually the team.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I'm curious, what are some of the trends that you're leaning into here in this year?
In terms of business or in terms of marketing?
Either.
We are keeping an eye, obviously, on AI and the changes that are coming from AI. I am always a cautious adopter of new technology and new trends, and I am skeptical. And I think there was a lot of pressure, especially in marketing, especially in the agency world, when generative AI first made its big leap and, ChatGPT suddenly took over the world. I think there was a lot of pressure from other marketers that you should, trash all your systems and adopt AI completely. And if you didn't do it yesterday, you were behind the trend. And I'm like,
Mm,
I have seen so many trends come and go, and I've seen the enthusiasm out of the gate, and then it calms down. And either it goes away completely, or, really it's just one little piece that kind of ends up filtering forward. And, so I certainly was paying attention. I was always, when I would see a presentation or listen to something or read something, the thing that I was always looking for is what's the business use case. And a lot of the push, especially in the beginning, did not demonstrate a good business use case. And for someone like me, right? For a software company, yes, the business use case was there. I saw some great uses for SEO, but the only solution people could really come up with for social was, have it write all your copy. And I'm like, no, because again, through specificity is universality, and
mhm,
ChatGPT at its heart is universality, and all you're going to get out of that is whitewash. So we leaned in even harder into our methodology, which is, we do client interviews, we look for specific language, we look for trends, we look for what makes our clients' specific audience unique. How do they speak about their experience? What's the quality of their experience? And we create content that speaks very specifically to their experience. And our content just continues to perform. But that being said, I think it's also important to know, because I'm sure someone's going to be like, but the thing about social media in particular is that AI has been there for 10 years. I don't know, maybe longer. I am not I'm not an AI specialist, but AI, I mean, when we talk about the algorithm, that is and has for a very long time been AI driven.
mhm.
And that is why on the paid social side, for example, they've been increasingly reducing the targeting options. And, sometimes I'll get people talking to me and they're like, we want to geo fence this and only hit these kinds of people. And you're like, I'm sorry, but 2005 called and they want their targeting back.
Yeah.
Um, as the algorithm has gotten smarter, the messaging has gotten even more important, and the quality of the content that you're creating has gotten even more important. And so, it's like they're like, are you using AI? And it's like, well, we've been using AI. Are we using generative AI? Are we using it to write our ad copy? No, no. Because if you need AI to write your copy, by all means, please continue. I will take your clients from you when they're done with you.
I've probably had this conversation at least 5 times this week
Mm,
around there are efficiencies with AI, with processes and things like this,
yeah.
but how with creative, with copy, um, the agencies that I see are winning are like they're interviewing customers or
hmm
they're
Yeah.
interviewing subject matter experts within the organization or,
hmm Right.
it's very
hmm
human driven,
hmm
maybe AI assisted in, some of the production or the
hmm
efficiencies or just like the workload and things like that. But I've been hearing that a lot, even this last week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we always start every engagement, we start with client interviews. So we interview the key stakeholders within the company. So that could be anywhere from 3 to 5 interviews just for people within the company, and then we interview our clients, and that's how we're able to map out that specificity of language. And it really helps us understand exactly what makes our client unique in the space and what are the challenges, because I think the difference between with paid social in particular is you can hit people so early in the journey. You can hit them before they've even realized they have a problem. And so you're educating them not just on the solution provider, you're educating them on the problem itself. And you're giving them the vocabulary to describe their problem. And that means though that you have to meet them where they are, and where they are at that point in time often is experiential. I'm frustrated. I
Mhm.
don't have the words to articulate why I'm frustrated. Well, I'll help you with that. And we figure out what are the words that are going to resonate with people by using these client interviews. And the thing with paid social is you have 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds to establish relevancy and create some kind of emotional connection with someone so that they continue reading. And then the rest of your ad, the job is to get that person to click through to the website. You will not do that if you don't understand exactly what makes your audience tick.
Love it. Love it. That's great. We're going to transition into our rapid fire round. So I'm going
Mhm.
to fire out a question and you can fire back an answer. So, what's one tool or piece of software that makes you more efficient?
Airtable. We love Airtable. So much Airtable.
And what's one daily habit that you swear by? It could be personal or business related.
I start every day with giving myself credit for what I got done yesterday and mapping out what needs to get done specifically today.
I love that. Love that. What's one book or mentor that has impacted you?
Well, New Rules, definitely. Mentor, I would say Amrik Ernu from Agora Pulse. He's the founder of Agora Pulse. He's been a very influential mentor and advisor to me as I've grown the little business that could.
And what's one piece of advice that you'd give agency founders listening right now?
Always look at your systems. Always be very systematic in your approach to everything. Keep the centralized records and try to, as a result of that, make yourself unnecessary.
That's great. I love it. Where's the best place online to learn more about you and your agency?
I would say social squib.
Awesome. Well, Anne, this has been great. Thanks so much for sharing all these gold nuggets. You've truly been in the trenches, starting, on that beach in Antigua, I believe. Uh, and yeah, like you said, just like improving your system and getting better in learning. That just really that's gonna be really valuable. The honesty and the transparency of where you're at, I think is going to really resonate with everyone here who's listening. So thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and for everyone tuning in from the gym, in your car, or at your desk, thank you for joining us. If this episode was helpful for you, be sure to subscribe and share it with another agency founder who could benefit from it, because agencies don't rise alone, they rise together. This is Agency Rise.